Hey guys, Jeremy here. Weather is a little crappy this weekend. We're supposed to have downpours today, at least in Mass. And tomorrow we're looking at thunderstorms for a good portion of the day. Maybe if it clears up sooner, or maybe I might go out. But I figured this would be a great time to change the bearing covers on my trailer. I kind of took it apart a little bit last year and found that it was just full of old, really bad grease. I'm kind of wondering if it was ever replaced at any point, ever. So before I take it on the highway this year, that definitely needs to be cleaned out. New grease needs to be put on, and quite honestly, something a little more accessible put in place. To which point, I purchased the bearing buddies. These guys are pretty cheap. They're not as cheap as your standard bearing covers. Quite honestly, $10, maybe even less at a hardware store, trailer store. But on Amazon, these guys go for $25 for the pair, $5 and change for the covers. Let's keep dust out, keep it nice. So that is what I'm going to be working on today. So I've got the bearings, I've got the bearing covers, I've got the dust cap on that, I've got a grease gun, and I've got marine grease. If I'm really feeling ambitious, the drive on the Pilot also could probably use some grease, so maybe I might change that out as well. So let's get cracking. First thing you're gonna need, obviously, bearing buddies, your dust cap, a grease gun, some grease. This is specifically marine grease. They make this in various colors. I guess maybe the idea is you'd swap out one color every other year. You can tell what's old, what's new. Obviously, I can tell what's old. You're gonna want paper towels, probably an old shirt, something to put the grease in, screwdriver to pull the grease out, a hammer, and a 2x4. And I'll show you what to do with these in a second. All right, so this is the first one we're going to take a look at. You can see there's a little bit of rust around this. That's fine, but this is actually starting to leak grease around the outside, and that is not okay. If you push on that, that's just spongy. It actually looks like it's got a little bit of dry rot on it. If I go ahead and pull cover off, see, that is nasty. So that's why we're pulling that off. Finally, let's get as much of this out as possible. As you can see, I did quite a bit of damage to this thing taking it off with just the hammer. So if you are keeping these guys, I would highly recommend use the board. But since I'm junking these, yeah. So I'm try to get out as much of the old crappy grease as we can. Now, point to make, if you were to replace the bearings as well, which mine have shown no signs of damage, knock on wood, hey, that's pretty handy, there's some wood right there. this is actually what you need to play with right here. These are essentially heavy-duty cotter pins. These need to be bent up, pulled out, and then this entire shaft pulls out from there. But since I don't think there's any damage, and you would notice this on your trailer, wheels would be acting funny, get all wobbly. I got birds fighting on top of my door. Hey, knock it off. Seriously, guys, do it somewhere else. Sorry for the interruption. Yeah. So try to get in there as best you can. Take a screwdriver, pull all that stuff out. You don't get everything, it's not the end of the world. All right, I think that will do it. Two more goopy globs in here. There. And I just put my hand right in a pile of grease. Awesome. All right, so here we have the first bearing buddy. This is the self-relieving one. If you put too much pressure behind this thing, normally it will blow out the backside of the seal and your grease will leak out and you'll have a mess and some dead bearings. This one actually apparently relieves pressure, which is cool. So essentially what happens, you put this on dry, nothing on the inside. You take your grease gun, put your grease in it, you stick it right on that little nub right there, and then you pump grease through it and it will come out the other side. Now what is cool is that as grease comes through here, the spring will actually push out a bit. And this also keeps pressure on the bearings, so when you're changing temperature rapidly, like switching from an hour, hour and a half on the highway to backing your trailer into the water, your grease will change temperature, your bearings will change temperature, things will expand, things will contract. I don't remember which way it goes, but it expands or contracts. This will prevent it from sucking water into the bearings, which is awesome. So we're gonna take this, we're gonna dry fit it, make sure we got the correct one. That looks pretty good. We're gonna take our 2x4, kind of tap it in place, make sure that stays, put that flush, and take our hammer and start pounding that in place. This is going to take a bit of work and a bit of effort too. Again, don't take your hammer directly to the cover or that will happen. Use the board. I got one side to go in, not the other. I'm gonna risk some damage to this and try to at least do small taps to get it started. Oh, there we go. flush yet, but that suddenly just took. It's pretty good, but I don't want this thing popping off on the highway, so a couple more whacks. Make sure it's even all around. Forward a bit. There's one section right here that doesn't look quite flush. That's better. There we go. All right, so now we're ready to put our grease in. Pull tab here. Believe this is what, it's a nice blue grease there. Believe this is gonna go up top like that. And then this comes off the bottom, or do we leave this on? I absolutely have no idea. All right, so we pull this out all the way. You can see that's now empty. I'm gonna drop this in like that. Take my top. Screw that in as tight as I can. Release the pressure on this. I think that is, there we go. So now that is pushing down on the grease. And if I take that, stick that on like that. All right, so apparently I needed to actually put the plunger in there, so I was not getting any grease in at all. So now, put that in. Oh, now I feel some pressure. The grease started to come out sides there. Make sure everything's, you want to be able to push it down a little bit without getting too much coming out, because these are the pressure regulating bearing buddies. Not too big of a deal that I over pumped it. If you got the non-pressure relieving ones, what will happen is the backside will blow out and you'll probably have to get a new hub, which would absolutely suck. So then, last part. Take your dust cover, slide that over like so, and there you have it. That is how you put a bearing buddy on a trailer. Hope that helps.